The wind howled that night, as if the universe itself mourned the fate of 3 young men bound by dreams, ambition, and an unholy pact. The tale of Emeka, Yagazi, and Gerard is one you won't easily forget. It was a bright Monday morning in Lagos. The campus was buzzing with energy as new students arrived, their suitcases in tow and dreams shining in their eyes. In one of the male hostels, 3 young men met for the first time, Emeka, Yagazi, and Gerard. The room was small, with 3 metal beds pushed against the walls, a single table in the middle, and a small cupboard that barely held their belongings. But none of that mattered to the boys. They had bigger dreams than the room could contain. "Hi, I'm Emeka," said the young man with a serious face and a law textbook in his hands. "I'm studying law." "What about you?" "Yagazi," said the second boy, shaking Emeka's hand firmly. "Mechanical engineering. Someday, I'll design cars that even Elon Musk will envy." "And I'm Gerard," said the third, flashing a smile. "Economics. Numbers are my thing." As they unpacked, they chatted about their lives. Emeka came from a small village where his parents had sacrificed everything to send him to university. Yagazi was the son of a struggling mechanic who wanted a better life. Gerard's father had died when he was young, leaving his mother to raise him and his siblings on a small teacher's salary. "We have to make it," Yagazi said that night as they lay on their beds, staring at the ceiling fan that creaked with every turn. "I don't want to be poor forever." "You're right," Gerard replied. "We just need to focus, graduate with good grades, and the jobs will come." "Exactly," Emeka added. "We'll prove that hard work pays off." Little did they know, life was about to test their resolve in ways they couldn't imagine. University life was nothing like the glamorous image they had envisioned. The boys quickly learned that success in school wasn't just about brains, it was about endurance. Days were filled with lectures, nights with assignments, and weekends with endless group projects. Still, Emeka, Yagazi, and Gerard leaned on each other for support. Their hostel room became a hub of activity. The metal beds creaked under the weight of their books and the occasional midnight snack of bread and sardines. A single fan hung from the ceiling, rotating sluggishly in the Lagos heat. Most nights, they stayed up late, poring over textbooks and discussing their dreams. Emeka was buried in law books, preparing for mock trials and debating in student competitions. "Do you think this will ever pay off?" he would ask aloud. "Studying cases day and night, it's exhausting." Yagazi would always reassure him. "You're going to be a big shot lawyer someday. You'll thank yourself for all this hard work." Yagazi, too, had his challenges. His mechanical engineering courses were grueling, with endless equations and practical assignments. When the hostel generator broke down, and it did frequently, he was the one to fix it, earning the admiration of their neighbors. "One day, I'll build cars that never break down," he'd say confidently. Gerard, the economics whiz, was often buried in numbers, charts, and economic theories. "If you want to be rich, you need to understand how money works," he'd explain, drawing diagrams on a piece of scrap paper. "It's not just about working hard, it's about working smart." Their bond grew stronger through their struggles. On weekends, when they could afford it, they treated themselves to Mama Ejiro's jollof rice and beans at the small roadside restaurant near campus. The place had shaky plastic tables and stools, but the food was heavenly. Over steaming plates, they dreamed aloud. After graduation, Yagazi said one evening, "I'm going to start my own car manufacturing company. No more hand-me-down cars for me." Emeka smiled. And I'll be the lawyer who negotiates your contracts. What about you, Gerard? Yagazi asked. I'm going to run a business empire, Gerard said confidently. Real estate, banking, oil, you name it. Despite their optimism, the reality of their daily struggles couldn't be ignored. They lived off cheap food, hand-me-down clothes, and the occasional allowance from home. Exams loomed large, and the pressure to succeed was overwhelming. But they kept pushing forward, driven by the hope that their hard work would pay off. Graduation day finally arrived, a day filled with joy and pride. The boys stood tall in their caps and gowns, surrounded by cheering classmates and proud families. It felt like the culmination of years of sweat and sacrifice. Emeka's mother had traveled from their village to attend the ceremony. She hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. You've made us proud, my son. Your father would be so happy if he were here. Yagazi's father, a wiry old mechanic with grease-stained hands, patted his son on the back. You've done what I could never do. Now, go out there and show the world what you're made of. Gerard's mother, a schoolteacher with a warm smile, beamed with pride. You're going to change our lives, Gerard. I just know it. For a brief moment, the boys felt invincible. They had made it through university, and the future seemed bright. But the glow of graduation faded quickly. They returned home, certificates in hand, only to be met with the harsh reality of the Nigerian job market. Weeks turned into months, and months into a year. No job offers came their way. Emeka sent out dozens of applications to law firms, only to receive rejections, or worse, no response at all. Frustrated, he borrowed a car from a family friend and started driving for Uber. At least I'm making money, he told himself. But the job wore him down. Lagos traffic was relentless, and passengers often treated him poorly. Yagazi, meanwhile, struggled to find a job in engineering. After countless failed interviews, he decided to open a small mechanic workshop near his father's garage. He spent his days fixing old, battered cars, earning just enough to get by. This isn't what I studied for, he often muttered under his breath. Gerard found work as a casual staff member at a microfinance bank. His tasks were menial, sorting files, running errands, and occasionally cleaning the office. His salary barely covered his expenses, and he often skipped meals to save money. This isn't a job, it's survival, he told his friends one day. Despite their struggles, the three friends stayed close, meeting regularly to catch up and encourage one another. On most evenings, they gathered at Yagazi's workshop, sitting on old tires and sipping sachets of pure water. It was during one of these meetings that the frustration boiled over. Guys, Emeka said, his voice tinged with anger, are we seriously going to keep living like this? Barely surviving. This isn't the life we dreamed of. What else can we do? Gerard asked. We've tried everything. There's one thing we haven't tried, Emeka said, lowering his voice. He hesitated for a moment, then added, money rituals. The words sent a shiver through the group. For a moment, no one spoke. You're not serious, Yagazi finally said, though his tone betrayed uncertainty. I am, Emeka said firmly. Look around. Do you see any other way out of this? But, that's dangerous, Gerard said. And it's wrong. Is it more dangerous than starving? Emeka shot back. Or working like slaves for the rest of our lives? The conversation ended in silence. But the seed had been planted. After Emeka suggested money rituals, the idea lingered in their minds like a dark cloud. Each of them wrestled with the thought for days. At night, in the quiet of their small apartments, they imagined what life could be if they were rich. No more struggles, no more begging for opportunities, no more shame. Emeka was the first to speak up again. During one of their regular meetups at Yagazi's workshop, he broke the silence. "I've heard of a woman in Asaba who helps people become wealthy." Gerard raised an eyebrow. "And what's the catch?" "There's always a catch." Emeka leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Of course, there's a price. But think about it, what are we even doing now? Struggling every single day, working for pennies. Is this how we want to live for the rest of our lives?" Yagazi stared at the ground, the weight of Emeka's words pressing down on him. "If we do this, there's no going back," he said softly. Emeka nodded. "I know. But do we want to spend the next 10 years waiting for a miracle? Or do we take control now?" The friends sat in silence for what felt like hours. Finally, Yagazi and Gerard nodded in agreement. The decision was made. A week later, they set out for Asaba. The journey was tense. They didn't speak much, each lost in their thoughts. What would this woman be like? Could she really help them? And what would she ask of them in return? When they arrived, the spiritualist home stood at the edge of a dense forest. The house was small and dark, with strange symbols painted on the walls. The air around it felt heavy, almost alive. They stepped inside, and the room was dimly lit by flickering candles. The smell of incense filled their noses. At the center of the room sat the spiritualist, a small, wrinkled woman with piercing eyes that seemed to see through them. "You've come to me for wealth," she said, her voice low and gravelly. "I can see it in your faces. But are you ready to pay the price?" The three friends exchanged nervous glances. Emeka was the first to speak. "We are ready." The woman nodded slowly. "The gods demand a sacrifice. Wealth does not come freely. Are you prepared to do whatever it takes?" "Yes," Emeka said, though his voice wavered slightly. The woman stared at each of them in turn, her eyes cold and unreadable. Finally, she spoke. "You will need to take the wombs of 3 women. Bring them to me, and the gods will grant your desires." Gerard's eyes widened in shock. "The wombs of women? How are we supposed to do that?" The spiritualist smiled faintly, as if amused by his hesitation. She reached into a small wooden box and pulled out a vial of oil. "This will make it easy. Rub this on yourselves before you lie with the women. Their wombs will disappear without them even knowing." The room fell silent. The enormity of what she was asking hit them like a thunderbolt. "This is the price," the spiritualist said firmly. "Decide now. If you are not ready, leave and never return." The 3 friends sat in stunned silence. Finally, Emeka spoke. "We'll do it." The task weighed heavily on their minds, but they were determined to see it through. That night, they went to a nightclub in a nearby city. The club was loud and crowded, the air thick with music and cigarette smoke. They spotted 3 young women dancing near the bar. Emeka approached them first, flashing a charming smile. "Can we join you ladies?" he asked, motioning to Yagazi and Gerard. The women laughed, and after some conversation, the friends offered them a substantial amount of money to spend the night together. The women hesitated but eventually agreed. The ritual was carried out that night, though guilt hung heavily in the air. When it was done, they returned to the spiritualist, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. The spiritualist was waiting for them. She lit more candles and began chanting in a language they didn't understand. The room grew colder as she consulted her oracle. Finally, she turned to Emeka. The gods have accepted your sacrifice, she said. Your wealth will come quickly. You will pick up a foreign man in your Uber, and he will leave a briefcase full of dollars in your car. This is the beginning of your fortune. But there is a condition: from the moment you take that money, you must never brush your teeth again. If you do, you will die. Emeka's face paled. Never brush my teeth. For how long? For the rest of your life, the spiritualist said calmly. Do you accept? Emeka hesitated but nodded. I accept. The spiritualist turned to Yagazi. The gods have accepted your sacrifice as well. A German automobile company will offer you $1 billion contract to distribute their cars across West Africa. This deal will make you a billionaire. But you must only bathe in rainwater. If you use any other water, you will die. Yagazi frowned. Rainwater. What if there's no rain? Then you will not bathe, the spiritualist said coldly. Do you accept? After a long pause, Yagazi nodded. I accept. Finally, the spiritualist turned to Gerard. Your sacrifice has been accepted. The bank will mistakenly deposit billions of naira into your account. This is the start of your wealth. But you must never sleep under a building at night. No houses, no hotels, no clubs. If you do, you will die. Gerard's jaw tightened. What's the point of wealth if I can't even sleep in my own house? That is your price, the spiritualist said. Do you accept? Gerard stared at her for a long moment before finally nodding. I accept. The spiritualist smiled faintly. Then go. Your wealth awaits you. But remember, the day you break your condition is the day you die. The friends left the spiritualist home in silence, each lost in their thoughts.